Have you ever wanted to get in the mind of a top producing BDO? Well, in this podcast episode, I try to do just that. Take a listen. Last week on the podcast, we mentioned we were going to be doing more interviews going forward. So this week, we're going to kick things off with an interview with Bruce Boddie, the healthcare sales manager at First Bank of the Lake. I know Bruce, he's down here in my market in South Florida, and we've had him speak a couple times at the Fargo SBA conference. And Bruce is one of the top producers in the industry. Everyone knows this about Bruce, and he's a really good speaker. So I'm very excited to be able to interview him today. He's had a long, distinguished career as an SBA lender at some of the non-bank lenders back in the day, as well as large national banks. And he's seen it all. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey, Bruce, thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
All right, yeah, we were just kidding about we turn it on when we get on these interviews and our voice changes. Let's try to keep it as natural as possible. But I am really excited to talk to you today. I was looking at your LinkedIn. It looks like you did a short stint at the Money Store. And that's one of these lenders that I keep hearing about over and over. It's before my time, but every other week I'm hearing the Money Store. In fact, we just hired a couple closers out in California that were at the Money Store, and that's how they get introduced. Even 20, 25 years later, they were at the Money Store. What was it about the Money Store that makes people still talk about that today?
That's funny because I get that a lot too. There's like this Money Store alumni that's running around out there, and amazingly, we're all still in the business, which I don't know if that's sad or just or good, but I mean, when I joined the Money Store, they were the number one SBA lender in the country, and they had been for years, and they were for years and years after I joined. And so they were this non-bank lender that was running around doing SBA loans when really very few people were doing them, and they were doing a lot of them. And we were just really good at it. So I guess the Money Store was held out as the gold standard of SBA lending, and just generated so many super talented people in both at on the BDO level and the underwriting level and the closing level and the leadership. It just was a great place to be. Super fun environment. I remember they were headquartered out in Sacramento, California, and they had this quirky campus like vibe where and it was purple. Like the guy that the family that owned it, the Turtle Tops, they called it the Purple Palace, and everything inside was purple. And I don't know why. I don't know if that was some kind of homage to Prince or if that was just their favorite color or whatever. But I just remember that being super cool. Great place to work, a lot of fun, and just a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I think it's the name. I think it's a catchy name. No one does those names like that. No one's quirky like that in today's environment. Everyone's, not to pick on you, First Bank of the this and that, but I think a lender should come out and just come out with a really quirky name. But I know you were also at Lehman, which that was a non-bank lender as well, right?
Yeah, Lehman was a non-bank lender, and so you said I was a short stint at the Money Store. I actually was at that company for a long time. They were bought by First Union, which was then bought by Wachovia, and I was there for like 9 years. I only left Wachovia
Uh,
to go to Lehman Brothers, which as you noted, was a non-bank lender, and it, everybody knows what ended up happening with Lehman Brothers, but along the way, what was so special about that gig was we were doing um, basically commercial real estate, multi-use commercial real estate loans that looked like an SBA loan, but they were a conventional loan. So it was 90% loan to value, commercial real estate loans, conventional.
hmm.
And so that was, I mean, that was kind of like shooting fish in the barrel because you didn't have the guarantee fee, you didn't have the occupancy requirements, You didn't have a lot of the same stuff that you had with SBA, but it looked exactly like an SBA loan, 25 years fully amortized, all that good stuff. Yeah, those were the salad days, as they
Yeah, I was
say.
gonna ask, what was it like in the 2000s as a non-bank SBA lender? Like, what was the environment at that time?
The environment was, it's funny because it's very, very much like it is right now. And for the past couple years, I've been saying this looks oddly familiar to what it looked like in 2005, 6, 7, where there's a lot of money out on the streets. There's a lot of lenders. There's a ton of competition. It seems like every single deal is getting done. It's getting done somewhere. So it might get declined at 3 places, and the fourth lender will figure out a way to do it.
So now it all makes sense, Bruce, because after that whole thing went down in '08 and you left Lehman, you ended up at a large national bank, I assume to repent for all the fun you had over the last couple of decades prior. So
Yeah.
what was that like working for a large national bank?
After Lehman, when I ended up at Wells Fargo, you're exactly right. It was kind of like a port in the storm because after the whole financial crisis, 08, 09, it was kind of slim pickings, man. There were not a lot of BDO jobs to be had in the SBA world. There were not a lot of lenders lending. It was kind of a tough time period. So Wells had just bought Wachovia, or bailed out Wachovia, however you want to characterize it, and they were moving east. So they were obviously a big, big name out west and even into the Midwest, with SBA, super aggressive, active, doing a lot of deals, and now they were bringing that culture, that stagecoach culture, to the East Coast. And so I thought that would be a great opportunity to kind of get into a safe and secure environment where you didn't really have to worry about things going wrong. Fast forward to a couple years ago, and things went really wrong for the bank. But in the meantime, it was a great place to be. Working for a giant bank like that, it's got a lot of great benefits, unlimited resources. Anything that you wanted or needed from a resource or a product or an interest rate standpoint, it was available to you. You could deliver it. Long-term fixed rates, any type of loan they would do. On the flip side of that, working at a bank that size or an institution that size, tons of bureaucracy. A lot of times people say it's like trying to turn a battleship. Nothing turns on a dime. Everything takes way longer than it should. That's not a criticism. It's just a fact. Big institutions do things their way, and a lot of times it makes it tough for a salesperson. You're out there, you're trying to do your thing, and you're not able to quite get the needs of your customers met simply because of some policy or some procedure that's in place that makes it difficult to be agile.
Yeah. So would you agree that if you were, because there's some folks probably listening to this that work for a large national bank, would you agree that the best way to go out to market is to just be upfront about the negative, but also say, like, this is what I can do for you. We could probably get you the best rate, but just know you're going to need 90 days or whatever it's going to take.
I think absolutely. I think being upfront, no matter where you work, is key. Being honest with your customer, being honest with your referral source. It's gotten to the point now that there's so many resources available that you can't. No one is tricked any longer. But by the time you meet with a borrower, by the time you meet with a referral source, they probably, if they cared, they'd know everything about you before you even make the phone call. Within a few mouse clicks, your whole history is right in front of them. So I think that you have to be, well, first of all, you have to be honest with yourself. Yeah, you have to be able to understand what it is that you're bringing to market, what your value proposition is, how do you fit in, how do you play, And if you're at a big financial institution and things take longer than maybe anyone would like them to, but you're delivering the best pricing, that there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. That's how you're going to win those deals. And then
Right.
conversely, if you're at a small institution and your pricing isn't quite where you'd like it to be, but maybe you're a little bit more nimble and you're a little bit more aggressive on structure or things like that. That's that's what you're selling. And there are people that will respond to that and want to be involved with you.
Exactly. That's, we talk about that all the time. You really have to figure out what your value proposition is, and that's how you go out to market. So you're absolutely right there. No surprise. But I wanted to ask you, so, if you look back at your career, like I look at mine, I've always been on the upper tier of the production side, but at my first bank, that meant 6 million. At my next shop, that meant 15 million. Here it means 30 million. But I've always been there. But were you like that, or were you more like at one year you just had an aha moment and just popped? How do you categorize your production history?
So for me, I think you have to kind of take a step back and look at where I came from. So my first job at the money store was not a BDO job. I joined that company as an underwriter. So I worked as a credit underwriter for 3 years before I even got into the sales role. And I had not sold anything before I became an SBA BDO.
Hmm.
So yeah, so when I was an underwriter in Orlando, Florida, and there was a BDO spot opened up down here in South Florida, the Palm Beach County market. And so I was going to have one county to work, one county to
Hmm.
get all of my production out of. And it's kind of like you were saying, they were looking for somewhere 12 to $15 million in production was considered a good producer at that time. And fortunately, I had somebody at the money store decided to take a chance on me because, like I said, I had no proven track record at all. And so Dave White, who's still in the business up in North Carolina, took a chance on me, hired me to be a BDO down in that Palm Beach County market. I relocated to Palm Beach County. I knew not one single person. I didn't know. I had no friends there. I had no contacts. I had no referral sources. I had nothing. And so the company flew me out to San Francisco to meet with the top producer at the time, named Greg Luterio. And I shadowed him for a week out in San Francisco. And he basically told me, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I just sat there and I watched him work. I sat across his desk for a week. I rode with him in his car for a week and just absorbed everything he said. Came back to South Florida and started putting it into place. I think I started that role about February of that year. I did everything he said to do. I did the networking. I did you're not going to believe this. There was no internet. There was no internet. There was it was direct mail marketing. Direct mail marketing. I'm talking like a letter and an envelope and a stamp. That was the how you got yourself out to market at the time. So I did all of that. By December, the year's about to close, I had funded $300,000.
Wow. And then was that one loan?
It was one loan. $300,000. I'm thinking I'm fired. What am I going to do? I'm thinking, what am I going to do next? So I got through that year, started in January, obviously had my review, got put on a plan, whatever you call probation, whatever you call it. And for whatever reason, everything that I had done, all of that infrastructure that I had laid, all of those brokers that I had called on, all of those mailings that I had done, all of those, crew and CCIM events that I had attended faithfully month after month after month, they all started to pay off. And then before you knew it, the business started to come in. I started getting the closings. I think I did 10 million the next year, and then it was up from there. I've been the top producer in the company in whatever company I was at twice. I've been in the top 10 most times. And I don't consider that, that's not to brag, because there's people out there that are the top producer in their company year in and year out, and I don't know if that's ability or just desire. Um, but I don't know if I'd call that an aha moment, but it was an aha moment from the standpoint that I thought I was going to be bounced out of the industry.
Well, I love what they did there, where they flew you to go be with the top producer and you drive around with them, which today, if you were to do that, you would basically just be living with the top producer for a week in their house. But I mean, that is something I like. I don't think I've ever had that happen to me where I shadowed a top producer. And as a result, I got to where I am a lot slower, I think, because I've had to learn it the hard way. But I would love to just, that's why I started the podcast. I want to talk to people who are top producers and learn from them. And then also what I've learned, give that out to folks that listen to this, because to me, I don't want to say it's easy, but there's a playbook that you can follow and do certain things that are common sense things, like making calls, communicating the right message in an effective way, and then just returning calls and doing what you say you're going to do, not over promising, the basic stuff. But it's not a secret sauce type thing. I mean, it's, anyone can do it. That's why when I look ahead to my career and I think, one day I want to start coaching and mentoring people and trying to give some of this knowledge out and help other people grow. But I'm not seeing that as much when I look at the marketplace with, BDOs and managing BDOs. Everyone seems pretty hands off, like they don't want to coach or be coached. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think I do want to kind of be in that position one day. And you are in that position. So what advice would you have for me? And how do you see that role as a player coach?
So, the player coach role in the SBA sales world is, it, I think it's one of the hardest roles that you have. Not that it's a difficult job, but you have to walk a very, very fine line. So in other words, right now at First Bank of the Lake, I have six BDOs that report up to me, and they're all running around and they're doing what they're doing, and they all have different levels of experience and qualities and methods and processes that they do. Um, Most of them are very, very seasoned, so they don't really need management. They may need an ear. They just may need to vent or get something off their chest, or maybe ask for advice on how would you structure this, or how would you deal with this referral source, or this customer's unhappy about this, what would you do? I think that's more of what the coaching is for my group now. But it's also a fine line in that I have production responsibilities of my own. I have actually the highest goal on the team. So I have to balance, what's good for me with what's good for the team. And I think that when you're in a player coach role, it's very important that you have to be selfless, which is runs contrary to what I see most successful BDOs doing. Most successful BDOs are very selfish. And that's one of the reasons that they are successful, because they're able to take care of themselves and their customers above all else. But when you're coaching that type of person, you really have to take a step back, check your ego at the door, for lack of a better term, and help them to get to where they want to be. So it's a tough role, and it's not for everyone. I've had the sales management role where I didn't have production responsibilities. That's a lot easier role. I'll be honest with you. It's a lot easier role.
Okay. Well, but then you become, if you're not producing, then, you become less, I feel like, valuable. Like, I would not want to stop producing, because I mean, I'll tell you that we were at my last company and we had a non-producing national sales manager. They just eliminated the position and they never replaced it. And that's it. And then they just made managing BDOs. And so, but I would want to be like a player coach type, I think somewhere down the road. But the way I would envision it is, having a younger team that could benefit from my coaching. But you have a pretty seasoned team. Now, do they ever come to you and say, you know what? Because I mean, at the end of the day, they have to produce. So if they have, not a stellar year, or maybe two, back-to-back non-stellar years, wouldn't they just come to you and say, Bruce, you know how to do this. You're a top dog. Just why don't you just tell me exactly what to do and where to go and who to talk to so that I can get my numbers up?
Well, fortunately, I haven't had that. I haven't had that happen yet. But and I do that, by the way. Even with the team I have now, with the season team that I have now, when I joined and we filled out the staff, I'm a big culture person, so I wanted to set a certain culture for our team. It's a culture of collaboration and not sharp elbows, and helping people when they need help, and asking for help when you need it. I think that's one of the biggest things that people aren't willing or able to do, is to ask for help when they need it. Um, I set in place I wrote it out and I gave it to everyone. Here's the process for success at this bank, because just because what you did at your old bank worked doesn't mean it's going to transfer over here. And it didn't, and it doesn't. What I did when I came over here from where I was before would not succeed in this environment. It's just two different institutions, two different cultures. So I did lay that out for them. And what I always tell people is, whether they're old dogs like me, or whether they're new dogs, learning new tricks, I always tell people, I'm going to show you how I do it. I'll be an open book. I'll show you exactly how I do things. I'll show you exactly what I know works in this to be successful in this role. Now, you don't have to do it my way, but if you do it my way and you don't succeed, that's on me. But if you do it your way and you don't succeed, that's on you. So that's
Sure.
how I like to characterize it with people, old and new.
Okay. Now, do you get into a situation where, maybe you do have to try to do a little coaching here or there, but you have all these BDOs that I've come to appreciate over the years that are so different from one another in terms of their personalities, the way they go to market. You have the ultimate sales people, you have the really, reserved folks, you have BDOs that are aggressive, you have BDOs that are shy. There's a wide range there, I think. And when you're trying to influence behavior or coach or whatever you want to call it, do you ever think like, with this person, I have to do it this way. With this person, I have to do it that way? Because this is a topic we're thinking about putting into the Flagel conference this year as a room. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the matter.
100%. You have to realize that every person that you relate with in your organization, whether it's the BDOs that you coach, whether it's your underwriters, your closers, everybody is an individual, and there's no one size fits all for interacting with people. And it's so valuable to try to understand what makes somebody tick, because what works with one person won't work with other people. A lot of people think that BDOs are simply motivated by money. And I came to find out that that's not true.
Mm-mm.
Some BDOs are very motivated by money. They're the easiest ones to deal with, because all you got to do is help them make more money and they're happy as can be. But some BDOs like recognition. Some BDOs thrive on Some BDOs are just deal junkies. They don't care if they're making a lot of money on a deal or not. They just want to be doing deals. Some people like to be coached a certain way. Some people like a lot of hands-on. They want to talk on the phone every day. Some people don't want to talk to you at all. Some people like to communicate through text, some through email. And I think that if you are going to be a player coach or a leader of any kind, you have to get to know each one of the people that you are responsible for individually. And it's up to you as the leader to figure out what is going to motivate them to be the best that they could possibly be. I had somebody on my team that was struggling last year, and I didn't know him very well. And so I went to him and I said, I think you'd agree we're having some trouble. Um, we've talked about it a few times. And long story short, I said, I have no choice but to put you on a performance plan. And we went through the performance plan. And when I got done talking, he said to me, this kind of thing doesn't motivate me. This doesn't work for me. This is not how you're going to get the best out of me. Now, if you want to talk about an aha moment, that was an aha moment because I thought, I'm being the leader and the coach, and we're gonna snap this person into shape. And I thought that was very, um, I don't know, very mature and communicative for that person to tell me this doesn't work for me.
Right.
I pulled the plan away right away. Yeah, I thought about it. I spent a day thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? He's right. If he's not going to respond to this, all we're going to do is end up firing him, and all that does for me is have to go find another BDO, which is the part of the job that I hate the most is recruiting. Uh,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I mean, you know, when you're looking for a candidate, and I know you mentioned culture, that it's got to be a good culture fit. But what else? How else can you screen a BDL and just try to think ahead? Are they going to be successful here? What are you looking for?
so it's funny because we just we just had to fill a vacant role about a month ago, and so when you're out there and you're recruiting and you're looking for people, and you can rely on the recruiters, and they do a great job by and large because they're so interconnected with people that you would never even that would never even be on your radar. And then you use LinkedIn or use whatever, and you're just trying to go through your contacts and find the right person. Well, there's never a recruiter never brings you somebody that's has weak performance, right? Everybody all has always
Right.
been, they've always been the top 25% of their sales force. They've always done this, they've always done that. You look at their production reports and they show you all this stuff, and everybody's resume looks amazing, and and it's like, all right, that's great. But ultimately, these people are looking for a new gig for some reason, and you have to try to drill down to what is motivating this person to want to move from where they are to me to where I am. And so that's it's always hard to understand and identify what's the real motivation. What I look for is not so much, when I interview someone, it's not so much what have you done, because you could have succeeded or failed in your prior bank for any number of reasons that were outside of your control.
Right.
They could have a credit box that's weird. They could have a pricing policy that's weird. You could have personality conflicts within the institution that you had that were, again, that you just couldn't control. What I look for is I try to assess a desire to win, a willingness to do what I need them to do, a willingness to accept coaching, a willingness to go above and beyond and do the kind of the tedious little things that you need to do to be successful in this role. I interviewed
Right.
a cat. Let me give you a quick story. I interviewed a candidate for this most recent role that we were trying to fill, and we did a Zoom interview. And so we got on the call, and so I have some standard kind of questions that I ask. They're stupid and an icebreaker and stuff like that. And as soon as we started the call, she took the call over. Like I didn't even have a chance to get control of the call. Like she took it over, started telling me how great she was, all the things she was going to do, all the great things she did, and I'm just sitting there, and I didn't want to be rude, so I didn't want to interrupt her and try to get a word. I couldn't get a word in edgewise, and so to me, that's indicative of somebody who's talking when they should be listening, which is a bad trait.
Right.
And I knew that person was probably going to be tough to coach.
Right. Yeah, because if you're doing that on an interview, you're doing that on calls, and people don't respond to that. Everyone wants to talk, but you have to listen. And if you're not, if you can't recognize that on an interview, which is very important, it's a flag. You know, so that being said, you've hired people in your past, I'm sure, that haven't worked out. Can you learn from that? Is there something you could have said, well, maybe I need to ask this question or kind of dig a little deeper here going forward to try to weed that stuff out up front?
Oh, 100%. I mean, most people that I've ever hired that didn't work out, I can look back and say, you know what, that I should have done a better job of this. And I think what happens, and whenever I hire someone and they don't work out, it's 100% my fault. It's not that person's fault, because if they don't work out, that means that I didn't do something that I should have done to uncover the fact that they weren't going to work out. And I think a lot of times, we get so busy in all of our daily stuff that we unless you're really really good at what you do, it's hard to, like, if somebody checks 8 boxes and they don't check the two, a lot of times we look at those two and we're like, oh, we can fix that. The problem is you usually can't fix that.
Mm.
Those are the things that aren't fixable. But it's so hard, Ray, it's so hard to hire good people in this business. I mean, you'll find out if you move to that player coach role, or that coach role, and you're responsible for recruiting and hiring, you're going to find out how hard it is to find you, because
Well,
you're a super special BDO, and you're going to find out how hard it is to replace you.
well, yes and no. I think the way we're doing it now as an industry is we're only looking at SBA lenders to hire as BDOs. If we broaden that approach and just looked for people that had the desire to win, like you said earlier, and then just trained them on SBA, I think we'd all have much higher success rates. Would you agree or disagree?
I agree with you 100%. But here's the thing. So when I started in this business as a BDO, I was 28 years old, probably kind of sort of around the same time that you started. Imagine going and trying to hire a 28-year-old right now and showing them how sexy and awesome SBA lending is. It's not.
Well, okay, first of all, I started when I was 21. I'm
Oh my
31.
gosh.
Okay,
Wow.
but it was 2011 and I was just grateful to have a job. So, I was hired and I learned SBA, and it was sexy and I liked it because of the alternatives out there. I was a marketing major, so it was like a lot of sales. I actually accepted a job selling printers and then bailed on that job right before I started because somebody offered me the job doing SBA sales, and I just learned it that way. But I think there's a lot of 25, 26, 27 year olds out there selling something or doing something where you're interacting with people and you can just say, like, this person gets it, the way they're tending to their situation or whatever. It's just some sort of emotional intelligence that I think you either have or you don't. I guess you can work on, but I would love to put those people into SBA roles. And I'm sure if you showed them your pay stub, Bruce, they would do it.
I do agree with that, Ray. I really do. I think that you're nailing it when you say find somebody outside of an existing SBA BDO role, and that has the desire, that has the energy, that has the ambition to come in and know that, if you succeed at this for the next 20 or 30 years, you're going to make a fortune. I think that if you can identify those people, you will have greater success than what I see now, which is retread, 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 retread. A BDO that did 6 million at this place and they couldn't succeed because of whatever, and then they came to the next place and did 7.5 million, and then they had a breakout year at the next place and did 9, and then they moved and dropped back to 6. I think that's what we're, as an industry, we are suffering with that right now.
For
It's
sure.
kind of it's kind of like head coaching in pro football. You just see the same guys that go 8-8 every year, and they get fired, and they just get a new job somewhere else, and then they go 8-8 again, and you know.
Well, and I was going to add, because you said something earlier where you're like, if you hire someone and they don't work out, it's your fault, which is the sign of a good salesperson and a leader. You want to take the blame. But the reality is, if you're going in for a position as a BDO, you need to drill them just as hard as you drill them to make sure, or they drill you to make sure that you're going to succeed there. Like when I came to Fundex, I mean, I just asked questions so detailed. I was like, what's your discount rate on this property? And I'm like trying to make sure that I'll be successful. But I think about that as from someone who's been producing, coming into somewhere different. I guess if you haven't been successful, you're either going to be upfront about that and try to say, well, it's because it wasn't a good fit, and maybe that is the case, or there's some other reason, and you got to kind of peel back that layer. But I'm sure there's a good amount of BDOs that would just be grateful to have a job no matter where it is, and that's, I guess, what you have to kind of figure out as you're assessing candidates. So now you're at First Bank of the Lake. You guys have kind of started this up over the last, what is it, 2 years or less, really, and you've grown it.
Yeah,
And
about 18 months. Yep.
and you're doing kind of a vertical variation model, but it's been relatively successful. I think you have a good reputation in the marketplace already. You're growing the team, but when you got there, you were, it was basically a pure startup, right? What made you join?
So I joined in April 2020, and so we had been originating loans for maybe about 6 months at that time. What was interesting to me about coming here was what we talked about earlier. It was the exact opposite of where I came from. Much smaller institution. What I saw an opportunity to build something. Whereas where I had been before was completely built. There was no building to be had. It was just like you just had to keep from messing it up, and it would be successful. I wanted to have an opportunity to build something, to get in on the ground floor, to kind of influence the direction of the institution, to have a seat at the table, to have my voice heard, and to be in a leadership position where we could really build something special. My boss, Anne Marie Murphy, has a phenomenal reputation in the industry. I wanted to work with her, and I wanted to learn from her, and I wanted to know what she knew about taking a piece of clay and molding it into just a beautiful sculpture. And so that's it sounds ridiculous, but that's what I wanted to do.
Okay, no, I get that. I mean, I'm similar, and I like building things, and that's why I went to go work for a startup, basically shop, a few months ago. So what's the deal with the whole model there? It's a little bit different than how most SBA lenders go to market, I think.
So it is a little bit different, but I feel like it's a model that's starting to be embraced by a lot of institutions. And the model is it's a vertical model. So we try to align BDOs with their and credit folks and closing folks with their specialties. So we have a healthcare team, and we have a commercial real estate team. We have a franchise team. We have an M&A team. We have a manufacturing and export team. So the idea there is to create specialists within a specialty. So SBA lending is a specialty anyway. So how much more valuable would you be to your customers, your referral sources, the shareholders of the bank, if you're now a specialist within a specialized form of lending? And I think that is kind of catching on, although not everybody's able to execute that, because a lot of we were talking about recruiting and hiring. A lot of the BDOs that I recruit and hire, they're generalists. They do some biz acts, and they do some self storage and some hotel, and then maybe they'll do some startups and some healthcare, but they don't focus on any one thing. That's not to say that's bad, because I think that there is a place for generalist lenders. But I just feel like how much more valuable are you if you become the subject matter expert in one or maybe two specific things. I think there's a lot of value to that. And that's what we're trying to capture.
Well, that's what you've basically done yourself with healthcare, right? And how has that worked? Has niching down actually been able to grow your business?
Yes, it has. So by narrowing your focus, it keeps you from chasing extraneous opportunities, or it keeps your activities focused on what they should be. There's no time for for uh, for getting distracted with other things. It's a hyper focus on one specific industry or one specific deal type, and it drives behaviors really well.
Yeah. Well, it sounds freeing in a way, but it would still be a little bit, yeah, I'd have a little bit of anxiety, leaving behind whatever that is that I wouldn't be getting because I'm only focused in this one thing. I'm sure that's what, your BDO candidates are wrestling with as they decide to join as well.
Most definitely, yeah. Very few people are willing to kind of cast aside their generalist role, and I get it. I don't blame them for it. You cast a wide net. You have a lot more opportunities for fish. It's just that I would argue that a lot of those fish that end up in the net, maybe aren't great fish to have in the net, but you end up having to deal with them anyway because you've already cast the net.
Right. No, I'm with you. I think niching down is one of the most powerful things you can do. And before I had made the choice to come here, my other in my back of my head was to just because I really was just craving a new challenge. So I was just thinking, let me just build this niche. And that would be my next challenge. But I ended up doing this. But so I'm with you there. So as you move forward on growing your healthcare division, what do you see as the biggest challenge ahead of you?
I think the biggest challenge with for everyone right now, whether you're in a niche or a vertical, is competition. Competition is ruthless right now. Only one time have I seen as much or more money on the street as I see right now, and it's tough. Every when you think about healthcare, which is the niche that I'm in, that's already competitive anyway. Everybody wants to do healthcare.
Right.
Then you add on to that there's so many people doing healthcare. There's so many people chasing healthcare. There's so many people being very aggressive with their structuring, and their risk appetites are increasing to places that are honestly surprising to me. Then you couple that with the fact that money is so cheap right now. It makes for a very tough environment for everyone.
Right.
But I would be curious, Trey, like what do you see as the challenge where you are going forward?
Scaling, I think, we're growing very rapidly and laying out the tracks before the train comes is a huge focus. And, you can't mess that up because if you run out of track and things start to bottleneck and you're going to market as fast, hassle-free SBA lending, but now it's taking 3 weeks to underwrite a deal, there's a big disconnect there. And so when you're ramping up so quickly, you're having to ramp up the back office, the sales team, everything. And just trying to uh, keep that, in control is probably our biggest challenge. It's definitely no shortage of deals. We're doing mostly owner occupied commercial real estate and business acquisitions. And I'm not seeing as much competition as a lot of folks are for some reason, which I think is odd. Most folks are coming to me just to execute, and right now we're executing. And I imagine you're the same way. And niching down in the healthcare industry is probably a really smart way to gain market share because when everyone's competing over price or leverage, you have execution and expertise and a specialty that helps separate you from some of that competition. So but I think this year we'll have no shortage of deals. I mean, there's going to be plenty of business to go around with, these SBA incentives and, conventional lenders pulling back. It is sort of a perfect storm. And I think it's going to end perfectly fine. I don't think there's anything to worry about, Bruce.
Well, I'm gonna I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I don't think there's anything to worry about either. I think, yeah, just a little cautious optimism is in order.
Well, what you're saying is you said lenders are being really competitive. They're being stupid in some cases. And I think that's what you really were trying to say. And that is scary when, lenders are willing to do things that they just really shouldn't. It's not prudent of them to do, but they're trying to compete and that's how they do it. And that sometimes can ruin it for the rest of us who are trying to, you know, be good, prudent stewards of the SBA program.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, I appreciate you joining today, Bruce. This was a ton of valuable insight for my audience. So thank you, and I wish you the best. With your healthcare division at First Bank of the Lake. And I'll talk to you soon.
Likewise, Ray. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
All right. Take care.